Okay, this is part 3 of Federalist number 13. I am in middle of the second paragraph. The paragraphs in this Federalist are long. So he told us that we need to have a strong economy. To have a strong economy, he says, why go with 13 countries when we can unite under one union? This way we don't have to have that many government employees. We can save money. We don't need to pay for the same thing over and over. And at the same time, he talked about the possibility of confederacies. The northern states uniting together, the southern states uniting together. And then he got to Pennsylvania, and he said Pennsylvania will be in a situation where she won't know whether to unite with the northern states, the southern states. She'll be exposed to dangers, deciding what she'll do. And then he's gonna use this line. Okay. This would give her the fairest chance to avoid being the Flanders of America. Whatever may be the determination of Pennsylvania, if the Northern Confederacy includes New Jersey, there's no likelihood of more than one confederacy to the south of that state. So when he says he'll be the Flanders of America, he says we're stupid if we don't get united, because, for example, Pennsylvania might get to be in a situation where what happened to France and Spain during the War of Spanish Succession, you can look this up. War of Spanish Succession was overbalance of power at the beginning of 18th century, like from 1702 to 1714. This is when some of the European powers decided they didn't want Louis XIV to get stronger. So England, Netherlands, and Austria teamed together to unite against France and part of Spain, which was under the same family. It was being ruled under the same family that was ruling Spain. So they tried to keep the balance of power in Europe. They went to war, and the war ended in 1714. So he says, we don't want Pennsylvania to be in that kind of situation. We don't want us to be in that kind of situation, that by making confederacies, we'll start thinking of balance of power to balance the North and the South together. And that itself will create wars, that will create divisions amongst our people. So why do that? Why not unite from the get-go? Just from the start. Just unite and be powerful. So the next paragraph, nothing can be more evident than the 13 states will be able to support a national government better than 1/2 or 1/3 or any number less than the whole. In other words, we'll know, just looking at it reasonably, we know that in one union, things can be managed much better than if we were to divide to 2, 3, 4 confederacies. So be wise and not do it. Do not divide yourself into confederacies. This reflection must have great weight in obviating the objection to the proposed plan, which is founded on principle of expense. An objection, however, which when we come to take a nearer view of it, will appear in every light to stand on mistaken ground. He says, those people who criticize us because we want to have one union, if you look at everything they say, it's on mistaken ground. It's not right. It's wrong. It's been wrong from the get-go because they don't see the advantages of union like they should. So he says, people, don't be fooled by these people that say one union will not work. And then the last paragraph, if in addition to the consideration of a plurality of civil lists, we take into view the number of persons who must necessarily be employed to guard the inland communication between the inland communication between the different confederacies against illicit trade, and who in time will infallibly spring up out of necessities of revenue. And if we also take into view the military establishments, which it has been shown would unavoidably result from the jealousies and conflicts of several nations into which the states would be divided, we shall clearly discover that a separation would be not less injurious to the economy than the tranquility, commerce, revenue, and liberty of every part. He says, and don't forget, when you divide the country into 3 confederacies or 13 countries, then you're going to have guards on the borders, like we've already talked. Excuse me. So you see, this is going to create extra cost on top of everything else. And this is crazy. This is not needed. We don't need to do this. You not only you have extra civilians work for you, but you'll have extra guards having to work at the borders of these states. And then that will gradually, as we have seen in the past, remember in Federalist number 8, I said, when these states are divided, each one of them will have a larger military because they will be scared that the next state will attack them. So he says, on top of that, you'll have all these military garrisons in your states, and they'll cost money. They'll eventually bring war and not peace to you all. He says we got to look at the lessons of Europe and learn what has happened in Europe in the past few centuries and not let it happen to us here. That's what he keeps on saying. Again, this applies to us. Like one of the reasons that they wanted to join and become a union, because all this land was going to be available to them after the war, or all the land became available. And they were starting to have doubts. Is Pennsylvania going to take my land? Is Virginia going to take my land? So all of these were going to lead to wars between these states or confederacies. Joining the Union gave the control of those lands to the national government, and their sources of friction became less. Now the same thing with us. I've already mentioned that now in the North Pole, where because of the ice caps melting, where countries are going to find more and more minerals, natural wealth, gas, oil, and just so that they get to it first, because they think the other nations should not get, that is going to create problems for us in the future. It's going to be cause of armed conflict, war. So we constantly, what we have been doing this past 400 years, just giving ourselves an excuse to get into war, even though we know it's crazy, even though we know it will probably happen when we look at things. So he says, I say, why the madness? Why should we continue as tribes, as people in different countries that have their priority to only their tribe and country and not think of long-term future of the planet? Because there will be struggle amongst countries for those resources, the resources that are newly being found because of the damage to environment. And those, just like these lands that were going to be a source of trouble and war for these states if they didn't unite, it's the same thing for us. We don't unite. We think of things as zero-sum game. In other words, if you country X win, I country Y will lose. instead of saying that maybe there is more to it than that. And he says if we follow the logic we have been following this past 4 centuries after the Westphalian system, we are asking for trouble. We're asking for wars and an incredible waste of energy and human life. So we got to be careful. We got to be smart. We got to start thinking of the future. We got to start thinking of not just what is best for us and our children, but what is best for humanity and 3 generations down the road, your great-grandkids, great-great-grandkids. We've got to think about it that way. We can't always, we think only for what's best for one's own country without considering what damage one can do in one's country to the environment or in the next country that's adjacent to you. We've got to think about these things. We've got to think that our problems have become issues that need to be solved by the world, by all of us, by the human family. So this is the time for us to start thinking, learning about federalism, learning from different countries' experiences, and hopefully in 3 to 4 generations unite for a better, peaceful, prosperous planet where all human beings flourish.